All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here are doing our final preview and prediction of a long 2024-25 season with the national championship game going down in Atlanta between Ohio State and Notre Dame. 45.5 is the total. Ohio State 9-point favorite. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN, Monday, January 20th. Again, things started with this Notre Dame offense. Nick, getting here, they've not been exactly flashy, right? And we're not critical at all of that because we understand the style of offense Notre Dame likes to play with, and that's to be, very, cohesive in terms of, their offensive line, their run game, quarterback protecting the football, and that's just kind of how they play the game. They're not going to be too aggressive with the passing attack, and they're not going to look to really wow you other than just have good physicality with that ground game. And so far, it's really paid off for them, against Indiana, Georgia, Penn State. I mean, the numbers are all under 400 yards, only 244 against Georgia. But the rushing attack has been able to, somewhat make waves throughout the year. Of course, they've been incredibly dominant as they've reached the CFP. It's been tougher sledding against Georgia. They did enough to win that game, really due to Riley Leonard's legs, where we figured it would be, a big part of the offense in that contest. He wasn't very effective, though, against Penn State on the ground. 18 attempts for 35 yards. He did have a touchdown. That was a tough game for him, though. He's going to have to be a lot better than that. You're probably going to see about 20 carries in this game. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, of course, these guys alongside Leonard have phenomenal production running the football. What do you make of them after the Penn State game, Nick, where they were not very good? Of course, Love, it was a hard-fought game from him, hoping to be closer to 100% in this contest, but going up against one of the top run defenses in the country. It's going to be hard for them, but they got to stay ahead of the sticks. They got to have some variety, not be so predictable with the QB runs as well.
They certainly have to be ahead of the sticks here and play smart, confident football, avoid turnovers, win the turnover battle, which is something that you saw them put the ball in harm's way more than you would expect against Penn State. This is not a flashy offense. This is an offense that gets results. I think that's the big thing throughout this season, that they've been really solid at running and passing the ball, balancing 195 yards per game passing and 210 yards per game through the air. I reversed that. 195 yards passing and 210 yards rushing, plus 3 rushing touchdowns per game and 1.5 passing touchdowns per game. This is a unit that's really solid, and that starts with Riley Leonard, who is just an absolute warrior out there. Runs the ball very effectively. Did not have a phenomenal game against Penn State. I think he will certainly concede that himself, although he was a little rattled at points. It looked like he took a couple of hits that were taking its toll on him. It's been a long season, so I can certainly understand that for him. He's going to have a good game here, right? 35 yards on 18 carries, 2 yards per carry, and 1 score is not good enough for Riley Leonard. You want to see more out of him. 2 interceptions is certainly something that he's going to want to have to avoid. This Ohio State defense, we saw it against Texas. They're going to punish you if you turn the ball over. They'll make points out of that. They'll put themselves in good field position. You cannot turn the ball over here. He's got to be strong running and passing the ball. Jeremiah Love's got to look a lot better in this game, as is Jadarian Price. Have to have strong days on the ground. These are 2 phenomenal backs for this Notre Dame offense that's been really good at running the ball this year. I think this is a phenomenal unit. Love has 1,100 yards rushing, 7.1 yards to carry, and 17 scores on the ground. Impressive numbers there. Riley Leonard has 860, 5.2, and 16 scores. Jadarian Price is 733, 6.3, and 7 scores. A high-volume rushing attack that's rushing at a high clip. Very productive per attempt as well, averaging 5.8 yards to carry across the board. They're going to have to find a way to do that. This is a very stingy Ohio State run defense. It's going to look to dominate and capitalize in the trenches.
They're going to have to throw the football, and they did that with some good success against Penn State at times. And again, it's just about staying ahead of the sticks, rolling Leonard out, throwing guys, stop routes and, short, quick things like slants, getting it to your tight end, and Mitchell Evans, who had a great game against Penn State. Just staying ahead of the sticks, avoiding negative plays, that's going to be the key for them. Of course, they had that big 40 to 50-yard pass play to Jaden Greathouse that was able to tie up that game late. He has now eclipsed the team high in receiving yards. Bo Collins, he has an injury, should be good to go. He's been incredibly quiet in these playoffs. Hasn't really did anything. Only 3 catches across 3 games for under 40 yards. Jordan Fajon, he's going to be one of their top players too. Jaden Harrison, you've seen what he can do, especially in the special teams game. And you have another tight end, Eli Raridan. They have some confidence in him. And then Chris Mitchell can be a possession pass catcher as well. We've talked about it throughout the year, Nick. This is a team that has pretty respectable pass catchers. This is not a bad group here. I think if Sam Hartman was still the quarterback like he was last year with a majority of this group, I think that the production would be more staggering than it is this year. But again, the style has called for these guys to really play selfless football, and that's why they've made it here to the national title, because these guys have no problem going out there playing hard, blocking, and making tough plays when their number is called. They're going to have to be aggressive in this game. They're going to see Leonard probably throw for the most attempts he's had all season long, and these guys are going to have to come and make some tough plays, and I think they're capable of doing that throughout the contest.
You certainly got to roll the dice here if you're Notre Dame. This is a big opportunity to do so. National championship. I think you have to go out there and kind of change the playbook a little bit. Mike Denbrock calling the play is going to hopefully look to dial up something very strong here. Greathouse has been really solid for this team, 464. About 13 yards for grab and 2 scores for him, while Bo Collins has 455 and 12.5 yards for grab, 3 scores, while Mitchell Evans has 3 scores as well, 369 yards receiving. Face-on Love, Harrison, and Mitchell all get involved as well. Harrison, a really good special teams player. This is a passing attack that's, obviously not the highest clip in the country, but a still very steady unit. Around 195 yards per game and 1.5 touchdowns. Riley Leonard, 66% comp rate. He's pretty accurate. Obviously, 8 turnovers, a little disappointing in the 2 against Penn State. I mentioned it earlier, definitely disappointing. But they got to play clean football. If they play clean, smart football, protect the ball, and use the passing attack when they need to, stay in front of the sticks, and give them the ability to run on third down, I think they'll have a lot of success in this matchup.
In the offensive line, there's some things to monitor with them. It's been a great group throughout the year that's gotten better as the seasons went on. They've proved they can play some tough physical affairs, in a phone booth, and they've done a good job throughout this playoff showcasing that. Anthony Knapp, though, when he went down, I seen him on the sideline, kind of figured he'd probably be out for this game. And he indeed is. Tosh Baker stepped in at left tackle. He was pretty abysmal in pass protection. Billy Schraith at left guard has been great all year. Pat Coogan at center as well, 2 veterans. Right guard, they're hoping to have Sirocco Spindler back for this game. He exited. Charles Ragusaw, he was really good in pass protection. There were some miscommunications at times on run plays that led to negative yards for them, so you want to clean that up during pretty much the bye week. And then Emil Wagner, right tackle, has been pretty stable throughout the year. Didn't have the greatest of games against Abdul Carter, though. I think he certainly fared as best as he could, only allowed 1 sack. Did have 5 pressures. This offensive line, they're going to be in some uncomfortable situations, Nick, because they're probably going to struggle to run the football. They got no choice but to be incredibly physical, though, so they can open things up for this pass game, because if they're living in 3rd and long the entire game, they're the worst team in the country in 3rd and long, and doing that against the Buckeyes, if that allows them to sit back and zone and man, it's going to be a tough day for this Notre Dame offense. So this O-line, they have to be strong, and they're going to have to be physical.
Cannot routinely get in 3rd and long situations. It's got to be 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, and below if you're going to have success in this matchup. This offensive line's a little banged up. It's still a very strong unit. It's been physical. They had a good day against Penn State, in my opinion. But Penn State rushing defense is not as strong at times as the Ohio State rushing defense that has some physical players that are really good off the edges there. Got to be strong on both left tackle and right tackle. They're going to put a lot of pressure on Riley Leonard, try to rattle him, make him make mistakes out there. They're going to put tons of pressure on him. Got to be strong here. This is a very good defensive line for Ohio State. This is a tough matchup. A physical unit, though, that's fared pretty well so far this season. Their biggest test in the biggest game. Can they stand up to the matchup?
Yeah, he moved to an Ohio State offense that's just been dominant throughout these playoffs. Had 0 issues getting out the hot starts against Tennessee and Oregon, scoring 40-plus on that one. End of the day, as a team with 28 against Texas, the offense, though, they struggled at times. It was nothing really too major that would have costed them the game, but it almost became crunch time, and they almost potentially were to have been in the spot where they were going to have to step up and make some big plays. Will Howard, I thought he had a relatively good game, almost 300 passing, with 289 and a touchdown off that 75-yarder from Henderson. Did have a bad interception in plus territory that halted a drive. Pretty good game, though, considering Jeremiah Smith was being double and triple teamed the entire game, Nick. Texas just sat in a cover 2 shell the entire contest, and against that D-line, it certainly was going to be hard for them to run the football. They're going to have more opportunities here. Should see a lot more man coverage, a lot more blitz opportunities. I think Notre Dame also looked to change things up a little bit. But this was a good game from Howard. He had a big 4th down rushing conversion. Probably would have hit Pater if he doesn't slip up there. But I kind of wondered where would the mental be after he threw that interception, because that was the big problem against Michigan, is they were off track mentally. That's why they lost that game. And he bounced back, and he was able to lead this offense to favorable spots, made some great throws, especially on 3rd down throughout the game. I think Will Howard, a lot of people question if this guy could lead him to an Natty. I said he could, and that's exactly where they are. What do you make of how he's performed? But the toughest challenge is probably out of the way.
Yeah, he's played pretty good football as of late and looking really comfortable overall in the season. 72.5% comp rate, 3,700 yards passing, 33 touchdowns to 10 picks. Also a really solid rusher with 7 rushing touchdowns and 160 yards on the ground. He looks comfortable and confident as of late, that was something you want to know. He really was inside his own head after the result against Michigan. That's a very fair assessment. He's been good, 289 and a touchdown and a pick against Texas. Still nearly 300 yards passing, pretty comfortable there. He was good in the other playoff games as well, which I think is a big key. 319 and 3 scores against Oregon, obviously a really impressive number there. And when they kicked this whole thing off against Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, 311, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Very good, very accurate. He's really looking comfortable in the pocket. I think this was a phenomenal quarterback in the preseason. I thought at times he was playing below his standards, certainly the game against Michigan, some other games in the regular season. But since the playoffs have started, he's been dialed in, really accurate, really solid, trying to protect the football a little bit more, scoring touchdowns, and looking really good. I like what he can do with this passing attack. Obviously, the weapons certainly help, and this is going to be a big day passing. This is a secondary that's been pretty solid for Notre Dame, has some really good pieces there. They got a couple picks against Penn State as well and put themselves in a good position. They would have had more if it wasn't for the fact that Penn State got bailed out by some penalty calls on some interceptions. So I think this is a defense that's very strong. Got to be smart and accurate with the ball here.
Yeah, you look at those weapons against Smith, only 1 catch for 3 yards, but his impact cannot be overstated enough. 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka closing in on 1,000. He has 10 touchdowns on top of 75 receptions. You needed somebody to step up. If your number one's going to be taken away like that, Carnell Tate, he's done that a lot the back half of the year, 698 and 4 scores. 7 receptions, 87 yards. The 7 grabs are a season high, Nick, and he ended up dropping a touchdown in that first drive. They still scored, so it didn't hurt him too bad. We can't have mistakes like that, but he still had a phenomenal game throughout that contest in Dallas. He was the number 3 who had no choice but to step up with Smith being taken away. At this game, I think this trio is going to be more disposable for Will Howard against the team that's going to play a lot of man.
So what's very interesting about Smith, it was covered pretty well, double covered in the matchup against Texas. I related to Will Anderson a lot when he was at Alabama, where he was constantly double teamed, and that meant that other team players on the roster had to step up. It's really hard to overcome that. Smith's a very talented player, and I certainly don't blame Texas for running out that strategy. Having a phenomenal season, 1,200 yards receiving, 17.3 yards per grab, and 14 scores. Emeka Egbuka has been phenomenal for this team as well, nearly 1,000 yards receiving and 10 scores, while Carnell Tate's been solid, 700 yards receiving and 4 scores for him as well. I like what these 3 can do. These are 3 very talented players. The rest of the offense has some decent pieces with G. Scott and Brandon Inniss as well. They also get the running backs involved in the passing game. This is a phenomenal offense. I think this is a very good man coverage unit in Notre Dame, but this is a tough test. You need to play against a guy like Jeremiah Smith who could really hit you, has a couple different moves already in his route tree, such a young player who's developing a phenomenal route tree and some phenomenal moves. Egbuka and Tate are very tough to cover as well. This could be a potential matchup nightmare for Notre Dame, who has been really good against the passes here.
In the run game throughout the year for Ohio State due to some of the issues up front. It's kind of, stalled throughout the year, but these running backs have been so good in the playoffs. You saw what they did against Tennessee, against Oregon. They had some great plays. It was tough sledding running the ball, but they still found 2 rushing touchdowns. And, of course, Henderson had that big receiving score right before half. Henderson, a very explosive player, elite breakaway speed, 967 for him, 960 for Judkins. I mean, these guys are pretty much splitting hairs. A combined 22 touchdowns as well. Judkins, more of a physical back, a guy who was against Texas running downhill with authority, and he was looking to lay some booms. 9 carries for 36 yards and those 2 scores. They weren't afraid to run downhill at Texas in the red zone, Nick. You've heard me week after week criticize these teams for trying to run downhill at Texas when they're inside that red area near the goal line. It hasn't worked for anybody. It worked for Ohio State. They weren't scared at all, and Judkins, he was able to cash in a couple of times. That's a lot of confidence in this offense, and it really shows you the type of level they're playing at.
No, they certainly weren't scared. I think this is an offensive rushing attack that's really solid. Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins each have over 960 yards rushing. Henderson is 7.3 yards per carry, 10 scores. Judkins 5.2 and 12 scores, plus Will Howard's ability to run the ball as well. This is a unit that's very strong at running the ball. They've been good. You obviously expect a little bit better. The offensive line has been a little bit weak at times, right? 163 yards per game is probably not as high as you expected. Obviously, they were going to always throw the ball a little bit more, but you expected them to be closer to that, 175, 180, 190 range. I still think 160 plus is not a bad number, and they've been playing better football as of late. They've been able to attack and win the battle in the trenches. This O-line's got to stand up, though, because there are some solid pieces on this Notre Dame run defense / pass rush that could really get after you and cause some problems for Will Howard and force him into tough positions.
Yeah, we'll talk about this offensive line. At the Michigan game, they were abysmal. Obviously, the 2 injuries to 2 All-Americans, it's going to be really hard. And at one point, I was like, it's kind of doubtful maybe they'll even win the national title. Looked like that against Michigan, and I still had the confidence in them to turn around and pick them to win the national title right after that loss, Nick. And I was like, I think this is being a little overblown. Ohio State's too good to just lose because the O-line's bad. And they've played really good, even though they have some guys that certainly I don't think are the greatest players. Left tackle Donovan Jackson, he's been immense for them. First time playing tackle in his life, and he's done a very good job. Austin Shriverland at left guard's doing his thing. Carson Hinsman, he's doing as good as he can at center. Right guard, Tagra Tajbola, I don't even think he's that good, but he hasn't allowed a sack this year. I mean, he's been playing some pretty good ball throughout the playoffs. And that right tackle, Josh Ryer, another guy who's been battle-tested but has also played some pretty good ball. This is impressive for them, Nick, because they've played three of the best D-lines in football 3 weeks in a row, and they've had no issues. They've been able to get consistency out of the run game, and the pass protection's been pretty darn good. The Notre Dame D-line, no disrespect, but they're not going to be at full strength. They don't have great depth or size to begin with. This is not going to phase the Buckeyes unless they get lazy and overlook this matchup. Do you see that happening?
This is a matchup they should certainly win, which is weird to say because on paper this looks like a weak offensive line, starting 3 younger players in the interior, redshirt freshmen and 2 redshirt sophomores. But those 2 sophomores, Hinesman and Tashbola, have been really good in the playoffs. Obviously, Heisman stepped in for the injured Seth McLaughlin, who was at center this season as a leader for this team. Those 2 players at center and right guard have been phenomenal. Josh Fryer has been really good. Donovan Jackson, who I figured would probably be the best piece on this offensive line outside of McLaughlin in the preseason, is playing really good football at left tackle, a good player that will get some looks for the NFL draft as well. This is a great unit. They're playing really strong, solid football here, and they have a nice matchup potential against this Notre Dame defensive line.
I'll move to the Irish defense, and we'll start with that defensive line. Of course, Riley Mills, their leader, has been out since the Indiana game. Howard Cross, he's another one of their leaders up front. He's been really good for them. Guys like Joshua Burnham, Donovan Heinisch, R.J. Oben has really stepped up. Bryce Young, Gabriel Rubio, he's been immense for them in the middle of that defense. And then Junior Taliamaka, he's been great as well. He's made some big plays. So, I mean, this is a team, Nick, again, they don't have great depth. They don't have great edge presence, but they're playing tough and they're playing hard here against the Buckeyes. They're going to have to do that once more. This front four can really dictate a lot in this game. What do you think is going to be in store for the Irish? Because even though we kind of look at it as a bit of a weaker matchup, they've been saying that for a couple of weeks and nobody could do anything. Indiana has a good run game, nothing. Georgia, nothing. Penn State, though, they were running the ball all over them, especially in that first half. They ended up rallying and playing normal ball in the second frame. But that first half was abysmal, Nick, from this D-line.
That first half was abysmal, right? That's an outlier in this playoffs. They've been playing really good football against the run throughout the majority of this playoffs, but that was a bad half. They got to be strong. They cannot do that against Ohio State, or this could be over before it really even begins. This is a defensive line that has players. I do like Riley Mills. If he can find a way to get fully healthy for this game, I know they're going to do everything in his power to get him on the field. 37 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Heinisch 35 for him, plus 5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. While some other pieces have been solid. Howard Cross has been really good for this team. 27 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Gabe Rubio and Bryce Young each have 22 total tackles and 3 tackles for loss, plus a sack for each of them. This is a unit that's not producing a lot of sacks, but they're solid against the run. They're good in the interior. They're going to have to be strong here. They're a little banged up, giving up about 133 yards per game, less than a touchdown per game on the ground as well. They're going to want to attack you on the ground, that Ohio State offense that is. Can this defense be strong and hold them to the task? Certainly something you have to keep an eye on.
I think the linebacking group, they're going to be up for this task. Jack Kaiser's been great this year. He's been a highly efficient tackler, great run defender. I really like what he's been bringing to the table. Season-high 10 tackles in that game against Penn State. He's really had to step up and deliver a lot of big plays for them, and that's what he's done. You look at the guys next to him, and Drake Bowen. He's been great as the season's went on. He's also been efficient as a tackler. Jaden Osbury, not as much. He's been pretty poor in coverage. He's been respectable against the run, but you try to keep him on the sideline, potentially as much as possible in favor of guys like, Jalen Sneed, Adon Schuler, hybrid guys who can get into the box instead. What do you think of this linebacking group, Nick? Because the 2 starters are as good coached as anybody in the country by Marcus Freeman, and they haven't folded once this year, so I expect them to be all over the field on Monday night.
Yeah, I love this linebacking core. One of the best in the nation. A unit I love watching. Kaiser, 85 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. Been really good. Bowen's been solid as well. 70 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack, plus 2 pass breakups for him. Ashbury's been solid, moving him around. 56 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss. Solid numbers there. And then Jalen Sneed has been really good when they move him into the box. He's a versatile player. You may see him at safety as well. 50 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. A good coverage asset as well for this team. Solid 4 players there. Really good unit.
Now we move to the Notre Dame secondary, one that was coming off a tough challenge of their own, defending Tyler Warren. The tight ends, they had some success for the most part, but they held receivers to 0 receptions, which was kind of shocking. Obviously, game plan from Penn State was a little bit poor. At the same time, credit's got to be due, because those are solid enough pass catchers to make plays on occasion against the secondary, and they were not able to. Gave them a few big plays against Georgia, but nothing that really worried you too much. Throughout the year, Nick, they've not played very tough passing attacks. We wondered how they'd fare against tougher ones in the CFP, and I'd say it's been pretty good. Against USC, they gave up 360 and 3 touchdowns. That's the most comparable, attack to the one the Buckeyes are going to bring to the table. Christian Gray, one defensive player of the game in Miami. Him and Leonard Moore have been a great 1-2 tandem since Benjamin Morrison went down. But in this game, you're going to wish he was healthy because Gray against USC gave up 130 yards, Nick, and I think if they're going to play a man coverage-heavy approach, it's not going to be pretty. I think Jordan Clark in the slot, though, he's going to be very competitive. He brings a lot to the table. And, of course, the 2 safeties, Xavier Watts, he's elite, one of the best in the country. Phenomenal run defender, great in coverage, great tone setter overall. Adon Schuler's had a great playoffs. He was phenomenal against Georgia. And then Rod Hurd gets on the field a good bit. He's great against the run. Very efficient tackler as well. I think this man coverage outside, Nick, I don't know if that's going to be the full approach. I think Al Golden's going to look to mix it up. But the philosophy this year has been to play man and send blitzes, and against Ohio State, just don't know if that's going to cut it. And if that's what they're going to play, these guys are going to get torched.
These guys are potentially potential to get torched if that is how you're going to play this game. They got to be strong here. They got to be really good in this matchup. This is a tough matchup, right? When you look at it, this is a secondary that has some good pieces, but they've struggled. Christian Gray has struggled at points during this season. Had a phenomenal game, though, against Penn State. Had the game-sealing interception. Basically, the interception that sent up that game-winning field goal. A really good read by him to go over there and make a huge play and put them in a position to win that game, which they did on a walk-off field goal. Jeter nailed that kick. 32 total tackles for him, 3 tackles for loss, 3 picks, one of them a pick 6, 9 pass breakups. Outside of him, this is a really strong unit with some other pieces. Xavier Watson, All-American. I love watching him play. 74 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, including a pick 6, 9 pass breakups for him. Adon Schuler's been good, 55 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 picks, 5 pass breakups. Leonard Moore has been really good in the second half of the season, 43 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 10 pass breakups. Rod Hurd has been good as well, 36 total tackles, 4 pass breakups. And Jordan Clark has been solid at safety, moving him around, 34 total tackles and 5 pass breakups. This secondary has to play a flawless game, right? There's no other way to sugarcoat it. If they don't play a flawless game, they lose this game. This is a tough matchup for them. They got to be strong the entire day.
Now I moved to an Ohio State defense that was largely forgotten, I felt like, after the Michigan game. Everyone's reminded just how good they are now, because they've been flat-out dominant. This front four has really just been able to control things and allows everyone else to play free-flowing ball. And they have a pretty juicy matchup here. You start with Jack Sawyer up front. This guy's been absurd the last 4 games of the year. He's been on fire in the CFP. Of course, he's had 2+ pass breakups over the last 3 games, total of 7 on the year. He had the 80-yard strip sack there on 4th and goal to win the game against Texas. I know they lost the Michigan game, but there was a chance for Michigan to take the lead there. At the goal line, they decided to throw the ball. He steps up out of nowhere and intercepts it. Nick, this guy is unreal. I mean, this is the definition of an evil villain, ruining anyone's hopes of anything. His production has just been off the charts. Finally showing up and playing to that 5-star billing he had out of high school. Obviously, it's much easier when you have elite seniors around you, and guys like JT Tumalau, Tyleik Williams, and Ty Hamilton on the interior. You're getting help from everybody as well. Guys like Caden Curry have been great. Kanata Jackson, the depth pieces have been very good. What do you think of this D-line led by Jack Sawyer, who's playing out of his mind in terms of run defense? These guys are not giving up too much. 89.9 yards per game. It's been very tough sledding for anyone this year, and for the Irish, that's bad news.
Phenomenal play by Jack Sawyer in that game. Obviously, a huge play that you just alluded to there. He's been phenomenal for this team. 56 total tackles, 9 sacks for him, a pick, and 7 pass breakups, plus 3 fumble returns, and 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles returned for a touchdown. Just phenomenal, right? This guy is so good at edge. Really come off the edge there. Such a phenomenal player. JT Tomlino has been solid as well. 56 total tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks. Great numbers there. Ty Hamilton's been good for this team as well. 51 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Tyleik Williams, 42 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and Caden Curry with 21, 4, and 2.5. Just a great unit, right? There's no other way to sugarcoat it. This is a veteran unit that's playing some of their best football they've played in their careers. They're hard-hitting. They're solid against the run. You rattled off the stat there, under 100 yards per game. Really, really good unit overall. I think this is what they were hoping this run defense would do this year. Looking really good on the defensive line.
Middle of the defense is even better. Sonny Styles, he's had some issues at times. That rail route by Texas was really throttling them. That's it. That's the only thing this defense was giving up, was that one route. Running backs were getting a lot of receptions against them. Maybe something that's what the Irish should try and incorporate. I'm sure that will be cleaned up, though. Cody Simon, though, he's been elite. He's been great in coverage. He's been a phenomenal run defender. He's been a tone setter if I've ever seen one this year for this defense. 104 tackles for him, 11.5 TFL. 7 sacks, and 7 pass breakups. This guy's just been phenomenal. Any way you put it. They've been tough to make plays on, Nick, but right there, that was a weak spot for him against Texas, and it allowed that game to be a lot closer than it should have been.
Yeah, this is something you got to keep an eye on. Sonny Styles, I haven't been in love with his coverage when he drops back into coverage, and I've been worried against pass a little bit with him, but in general, still a really talented player. 94 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks from 5 pass breakups. Cody Simon, 104 total tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 7 pass breakups. Nearly 200 tackles between the two of them. They're just phenomenal production out of those two. CJ Hicks has been solid as well at linebacker, moving him around 22 total tackles and 2 sacks. Good numbers, a really productive unit here that I like what they can do. Got to clean up some of the mistakes, look a little bit better in coverage, certainly for Styles at least. Overall, though, a phenomenal unit that's playing great football.
As is this secondary. It wasn't a perfect game against Texas, but for the most part, they really weren't giving up too many big plays. Ewers, for some reason, just decides to always come alive in these fourth quarters, and of course, the running back routes were able to pick up some good yardage. Gave up 283 in that one and 2 scores, had a nice interception, and of course, they were able to generate a numerous amount of sacks. The number on that one was 4. It's kind of been the theme throughout these playoffs, Nick. This pass rush has been great. The front four has been controlling things, and this secondary has not really had many busts at all. Davison Igbeson, Denzel Burke, they've been playing great ball out wide. Igbeson is a great run-to-stopper as well. Jermaine Matthews has given them some nice reps when he comes in as that number 3. Jordan Hancock in the slot throughout the year has just been dominant in his role. And you look at the safeties. What can you say about this duo? It's the best in the country by a landslide. Lathan Ransom, he's been doing it for years for the Buckeyes. He's a great run asset. And then Caleb Downs is even better in coverage with his communication and his skills, and then as a run defender as well. This guy's just phenomenal at filling gaps, and he was the one that had that big tackle for loss on that toss play at 2nd and goal that really was able to catapult them to the position they got into. So Caleb Downs, this guy's an elite playmaker any way you put it. He's probably going to be in the cover of the video game next year, Nick. This guy is a phenomenal player for them, and you got to imagine that he's going to have some big plays in this game.
As an Alabama fan, it continues to kill me that Caleb Downs left Tuscaloosa. Another All-American season from him. Just an incredible player. So talented. What an incredibly talented young man. 77 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss for him. 2 picks and 6 pass breakups. He is so good. I wish he would come back to Tuscaloosa. What a talented player. Lathan Rayson's been really good for this team as well. 73 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, a sack, and a pick for him. 2 pass breakups. Jordan Hancock's been good. 45 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pick, and 7 pass breakups, while Denzel Burke has been good. 45 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups. Igmanson's been really good in coverage, right? Probably the best pure coverage asset on this team. 41 total tackles, 9 pass breakups for him, 2 picks, 2 tackles for loss, while Jermaine Matthews has been solid as well. 21 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for him. Solid numbers overall. This is a secondary that's playing really good football. A lot of talented pieces here. We said that this is one of the best secondaries in the nation at the start of the year, giving up 160 yards per game and less than a touchdown per game through the air. Yeah, those numbers check out. That's pretty good for me. A great secondary here that's looking to have a strong day against a team that's been a little shy in the passing attack.
Now look at the tail of the tape, the team comparisons. I don't really think there is much here to really decipher that Ohio State is a clear edge everywhere. Offensive line, if the Irish were healthy, maybe that you could argue that there, but not really with how the last 3 games have went. I don't know, Nick. There's no real consolation here. I don't think the Irish come even close to touching the Buckeyes in any of these categories. Maybe linebacker.
Yeah, linebacker would be the only one I'd kind of try to make a case for, because I think there are some really talented pieces on the Notre Dame, mainly Derek Bowen and Jack Kaiser. Of course, it's tough when you look at the linebacking core for this Ohio State team that also has the top 2 tacklers there, so it's tough to win that. Maybe because Styles' weaknesses in the coverage at times and some of the mistakes from him would potentially give Notre Dame that edge at linebacker, but it's tough. I'm really grasping here. I think you nailed it, though. This is a clean slate from Ohio State.
Look at the final thoughts and the prediction. For me, it's been a clean sweep, Nick, in these playoffs. Perfect bracket. I had Ohio State meeting Notre Dame, and I had the Buckeyes coming out on top. And I think keys to the game, they're going to have to out-coach and out-physical the Buckeyes, and they've proven they can out-coach with Freeman at the helm and who they have on staff. I think that's certainly a possibility for Ohio State holding the emotion, and avoid silly pre-snap fouls. That really derailed a lot of drives for Ohio State. Of course, you had the turnover. A lot of stuff that they typically haven't been doing. That game should have been a lot further than it was in terms of score against Texas, and just continue to be aggressive when it comes to run stopping, be aggressive throwing the ball downfield. I don't think this one will be close one bit. Love Marcus Freeman, respect what he's done tremendously, but sometimes the matchups are just going to be too much to overcome, and in this one, that's going to be it. They're going to be in 3rd and long the entire game. They're not going to be able to run the football. In Ohio State, they're going to have too much favorability when they're attacking that man coverage. I could be wrong, Nick. It hasn't happened in a while in these playoffs. I've had a pretty good read on this. 28-7 for me. Pretty lopsided score. For some reason, you picked the Irish. I really don't know why, but I think one thing that could potentially play into their favor is Ryan Day might be a little emotional about the whole Lou Holtz thing. You remember, in 23, he said they're too soft, and they went ahead and beat the Irish on the buzzer the last time they met. And, I think he certainly wants to try and prove a point here, and sometimes that can lead you getting out of your element.
So this is something where I look at it, it's quite interesting. I picked Clemson over LSU in the 2019 season, and one of the reasons why I picked Clemson in that matchup was I felt like coaching was making a big difference. I didn't really trust Coach O. I trusted Dabo a lot more, who had been there. Of course, Clemson had been. They were defending national champions. They had been in that situation many times before under Dabo, phenomenal program they have out there. I trust Marcus Freeman in this situation. I think Marcus Freeman's a phenomenal coach that's proving that he's one of the best young coaches in college football. I think he's having a great postseason. You've seen him outsmart Kirby Smart. He looked really good against James Franklin as well. Here, I think Ryan Day is still prone to mistakes as a coach occasionally. Certainly not going to get fired anymore at this point, given what has happened. This is a tough one for me. I don't feel super confident in Notre Dame. I feel like I'm going out on a limb here. I do like what this Notre Dame team can do. I think Riley Leonard will have a really good day, and I think they'll force a turnover or two unexpectedly and put themselves in a good field position. This is going to be a tough one, though. I could certainly see Ohio State running away with this one. I would like Notre Dame to win this game. I think Ohio State's going to keep it close. I think both teams are very strong. I think it will be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think there is an opportunity for a close game. I could certainly see Ohio State winning this one. I'm going to take Notre Dame because of coaching, special teams, and because I think that this defense will force a turnover or two that is unexpected. Don't feel great about it. Would not put a lot of money on this if I was going to be gambling a ton on this game. Do not feel very confident at all, but something just seems a little odd for me right now. Going to take Notre Dame. Don't feel great about it. Very intrigued to see how this matchup goes, though. Big headlines for both teams. Notre Dame looking to win their first national championship since the 1980s. The last time they played a national title game, they got blown out against Alabama, whereas Ohio State, the last time they played a national title game, they got blown out against Alabama. They also won one in 2014 with Urban Meyer at the helm in the first edition of the College Football Playoff. Could they win the first edition of the expanded playoff while winning the first edition of the regular playoff? Would be a pretty solid storyline for Ohio State fans and a pretty good way to wrap up a season that looked dead on arrival after the loss to Michigan. Really weird how they could win the national championship but also lose to Michigan. I know Michigan fans are going to take some sort of moral victory there, but that's a dumb thing. You want to win national championships, not beat your rival. I'm sorry, that's just not how it works for me. This is going to be a great matchup, though. The final game of the season. I had a lot of fun covering the season with you. A lot of previews, a lot of man hours spent researching it. All comes together on Monday night in Atlanta. One last game, one last go around. Hopefully it's a good one.
One last game for all the marbles. Nick's going with the upset. Thinks it'll be a close game. Ohio State, they're going to handle this one with ease. It won't be close. If they end up committing 0 turnovers on offense, the Irish won't score more than 10 points. That's another prediction you can throw out there. That's it for today's episode. Great season coming to a close. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.